Hi guys, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create a necklace with these sorts of beads. So this is the torn paper technique or the watercolor technique, and I'm going to be showing you how to create a few beads. Now this is one color scheme that I've done, or color palette I guess, and I'll be making a few beads like this, and I'll make a necklace like that, but I'm going to be showing you another one. Okay, so you'll need a sheet of white rolled out on 1 to 1 millimeter thickness. Okay, and if you have a little something on the white, I'll just scrape that away because I do want it somewhat clean. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to be using Gelatos today, but you can use any mixed media you want. So I'll just bring over the Gelatos that I want to use. You can use paint, you can use gilder's paste, you can use alcohol inks. Those are all types that you can use. Let's see, do I like that? No, don't like that red. There, I quite like that colour palette. Okay, so I'm going to be using Gelatos. So I've mentioned that you can use paint, gilder's paste, alcohol ink, mica powders, pastels, a whole bunch of different mixed media. You can even take small smears of clay and put it across here. That would also work if you wanted to do that. But for now I'm going to be using the Gelatos. So I'm going to start with this one, and this one is bubblegum. And you're just going to streak it across the clay like this. Really easy. And you'll do the exact same technique here with any other mixed media that you want to do, no matter what it is. Okay, then you'll move on to the next colour, and the next colour is lavender. And that one's very similar to the last one. Okay, next I will be using passion fruit, and that one's quite dark. So it's always best to start with your lighter colours and then work your way up to the darker colours. At least that's how I prefer to do it anyway. Okay, and then finally I'm going to use boysenberry. I do believe that's how you pronounce it. And that one's a really beautiful red. And what it's going to do is, as you mix it through, it's going to create purples as well as blues, which is why I've made this the last colour. Okay, put that away. Then just trim up your edge here. So I've got a little edge there and a little edge there that I'm not quite happy with. Okay, now you'll bring over a sheet of translucent. Okay, and here's our nice thin sheet, and this was rolled out on my thinnest setting on the pasta machine. And just smooth it over your sheet. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to protect that Gelatos, because if you were to sand your piece at any point, those Gelatos would rub off really easily. So this is going to protect against wear and tear and things like that, because the last thing you want is to go and sell this and then have a customer complain that it's rubbed off on their clothes, or they had it in some water and the Gelatos washed off. And the same applies to any mixed media that you apply. The only instance where you wouldn't want to put a piece of translucent over is if you'd used clay smears. Then you wouldn't have to put up. Okay, now I'm going to run this through a pasta machine on my metal setting again to lengthen. Like that. Go take it down one more setting. and it's now about 1 millimeter thick. Okay, so I'll put that to the side. And now in the same project, I want to take a piece of pearl white. The previous one that I was using was white Primo. Now I'm going to be using pearl white Primo. And I'm going to quickly trim up any excess and pop that back into my pearl white so that I can use it again. Okay, and I'm going to be using a different range of gelatos. Let's see, where's that passion fruit? No, I'll use these two. There we go. So I'm going to be using lime, snow cone, and the boysenberry. So I'm going to start with the snow cone because that one is the lightest colour of these. As you can see, it's quite light. And I'm going to just streak that across the clay. And this is so that we can have a little bit more interest in our project rather than a bunch of beads that all look the exact same colour. We're going to have 2 different types. Okay, then I'm going to work with the green. This is the lime. Now I'm going to use this a little more sparingly than the others. I'll close that up. And I'll use the boysenberry. And the nice thing about this is you don't have to worry about your mixed media overlapping. You don't have to worry about the colours mixing. Unless you're working with colours that are obviously going to make mud. Even when you do that, the gelatos kind of overlap rather than mix together. So they're very forgiving. And you can generally get them at any of your local craft stores. So it's a really easy supply to get hold of. Whereas some things like alcohol inks are a little bit harder to get hold of. If you wanted to work with mica powder, try looking at eyeshadow. Eyeshadow is really easy to get hold of, and it works just as well. Okay, then you will cover that with another sheet of translucent. Okay, and here's my sheet of translucent. Now, I forgot to mention earlier, but if you want to learn how to roll out your sheet of polymer clay on your pasta machine without it rippling or without risking rippling, I do have a video tutorial on that already, and I'll provide a link to that in the links below, so you can go and check that out. And trust me, it's worth looking at because it will make your life a lot easier. Okay, now we want to run this out in the same setting as the one that we did before, which will be my number 3, which is about 1 millimeter thick. And then we can proceed to make our beads. Okay. And by rolling it through the pasta machine, it's also going to be squishing out any air bubbles that you might accidentally have trapped in here. So it's a good idea anyway. There we go, and that will have squished out all the air bubbles. Okay, so now you want to decide. I want to just show you this so that you can see. You can either have this really nice light, no sharp lines or anything effect, and this is achieved a lot by a translucent, so I highly encourage putting the translucent on because it creates a 3D effect. And you'll see that the white's overlapping, it's just creating a really cool torn paper effect. Or you can have this effect, and the way to achieve this is you have the exact same sheet here, but then you would go and take a sheet of black that is about 0.5 millimeter thick and put it on the underside here. So you'd put it on this side of your sheet, and then when you tear it up, which I'll show you in a minute, you will get this effect rather than this effect. So whichever one you like the best, that's the one you should go with. I want the nice light effect. So I'm going to start by ripping that. all you want to do is just rip out tiny little slices. Now another thing to consider is I want to put make a bead just like that, and then a bead with the other veneer that we've done, but you can take pieces of each veneer and use them in the same bead if you wanted to. It's completely up to you, but that's another idea for you. Don't restrict yourself to just using one veneer. So I'll just continue ripping a little bit more, and then I'll show you how to create our first bead with this one, and then I'll show you another one with the other veneer that we have. Okay, that should be enough for now. Put that to the side. Okay, and I've just got some of this translucent, and I could put this back into my pile of translucent, but it generally has air bubbles and things after you've rolled it out, and it's a little bit harder to use it again, and I have it lying out and it's conditioned anyway, so why not just use it? Because you need a core for your piece anyway. So you'll lay a piece on, then you'll take another piece and overlap it. It's important to overlap your pieces, and that's what's going to give you the really cool effect. If you don't overlap and they're all lying nicely beside each other, it's not going to look as interesting. So this technique is really forgiving. There's not really much that can go wrong. You do want to pay attention to how you're finishing it after you've overlapped all of these pieces, so that your sanding is limited later on. But I'll show you some really easy ways of doing that. Like just a matter of putting some gloves on, and then you won't have any fingerprints. So it's really simple to avoid problems like that. Because I know a lot of you don't like having to worry about fingerprints or having to worry about sanding, but it's really easy to avoid the fingerprints. It's not that difficult. So I'll show you how to do that as soon as I'm done here. One last one. There we go. Okay, so let me just pop these out of the way, and I'm going to pop on a pair of gloves. And this is how you will avoid fingerprints. Rather than rolling your ball flat with just your hands, pop some gloves on and roll it, and you won't have any fingerprints. And then it means that sanding later on, if there's hardly any sanding, you do want to do a little bit of sanding if you want a nice sheen to your piece. But as far as sanding goes, there's very little of it, because you won't have any fingerprints. And to avoid the fingerprints, just pop on some gloves when you're rolling your bead flat. There we are. You can see it has a really beautiful soft watercolor feeling. And also, once this is baked, the translucent will clear, so that you'll be able to see the pearl white. So if I move that around, hopefully you can see it's got a little bit of sparkly bits all hanging around, which is what's nice about using the pearl white. Whereas the other one, which we have, is just plain white, and so it's going to look different, which will be nice in the same necklace, because you will have a sharp contrast between each one. But it's just swapping the clay out. So again, just wrap up your clay the exact same way you did before. Pop them onto your pendant. Roll your pendant in your hands to smooth it out, and then I'll show you what they both look like, and we'll pop them together, and it will make a really nice spring necklace, because the pink kind of looks like flower buds, while the green and blues looks like fresh melting water with leaves. So it's a nice spring project. Okay, and so here are our two pieces. And now you don't have to worry about getting them both the exact size. If you wanted to, that's fine. But for those of you that don't really feel like it, it doesn't really matter if you don't get them the exact same size. Try to get them close-ish, but you don't have to worry too much about it. Now you can see that there's quite a difference between these two because of the white and the pearl white. This one has a lot more of a faded, watery look, while this one looks a lot more like paper in a way, which is really nice. I like the contrast between the two, and they'll look really nice in a necklace together. So I'm going to make a whole bunch more of these two together. I'm not going to be combining the two veneers together into one bead, because I might do one bead or not, we'll see. But anyway, I'll make a whole bunch of these beads. What you will do then, once you finish making them, is you will make a bed of tissues in the base of your oven. Well, not the base, where you usually bake it. Place your polymer clay balls onto the tissues separately, and this will keep it from having flat spots, because you don't want it to be sitting on a tile getting a flat spot while it bakes. And then you'll bake that for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature. Place a piece of plain printing paper over the top of these so that they don't scorch or anything while you're baking. Bake it at the manufacturer's recommended temperature for which brand you're using. I'm using Primo, so I'm going to be baking at that temperature. Bake for a full hour, allow them to cool, and then I will show you how many I've done, what I've done with them, and then I'll show you how to drill, sand, possibly varnish, and then we can assemble our project. Okay, so I finished rolling up a whole bunch of them. So I'll just show you these. And you can see they look really nice together there. They really offset each other quite nicely because of the difference in the actual clay that we used, because the pinks are really sharp while the green and blue is kind of watery, which is really nice. Just trying to place it in a way so you can see everything. There we go. So that's what I have so far. Then I was also thinking, what if we did some cool little lentil beads to kind of combine everything together? So I was thinking we do, so let's take that one and move that there, around that side. Let me just zoom out so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so we've got a middle over here, and then we'll move these three up so that we can put something here, and move these three up so we can put something here. And then I'm thinking along the lines of maybe some sort of a teardrop sitting along here, and then a kind of football shape over here. So I'm just going to pop these aside for the moment, and I'll bake them in just a little while. But I want to make those other pieces first, and then we'll bake them all together and sand them all together and things like that. So you're going to need a piece of leftover clay first that you will have rolled into a ball. There we are. And then you'll take your pink and your blue, and you'll rip out a whole bunch of things again. And instead of just using one colour on this piece, you will use both. And that will look quite interesting. And then I was thinking the swirls look quite nice because then they can represent flowers, because they kind of do have that kind of rose swirly sort of effect to them. I thought that would be really nice to the necklace because it would give us some focal points. And this is all really easy. Again, you don't have to worry about the size of your beads because it's kind of a somewhat organic necklace, because we're not going to be using resin or anything like that. So you want to get your beads to a size that is kind of similar to each other, but they don't have to be exactly right. And the lentil beads are a nice organic but really nice and shiny piece that you can add in, because the actual swirl pattern is always unique. You never actually get the exact same pattern each time. So it's another fun thing to add that's really easy and fun to do. Here we go. Okay. And then just grab each one, and I'm wearing the gloves again so that I don't make any fingerprints. Because again, it's easier to get rid of the fingerprints while your clay is raw rather than once it is baked. So I'm just going to go around and I'm going to kind of overlap these pieces. And then when I'm done that, I'll show you what to do next. Okay, and here's what it looks like. Now take it and roll it in your hands until it's nice and smooth. There we go. And you could use that as your focal point as well, because it's kind of mixing all of those pieces together, but I wanted to get that swirl pattern. So I like that, and I'm going to be using an acrylic block for this, because you need some sort of flat surface to help you do this. And then let me just position this into place so that you'll be able to see it as best. And then just slowly pressing down, go in a circular pattern. And keep turning in the exact same direction until you are happy with your swirl. So I hope that you can see that well on the camera. And what this is doing is it's essentially dragging your clay. And it will do it on the other side as well, so you don't have to worry about the other side not swirling. And now I'm going really slowly right now. What I'd usually be doing is this. So let me just do that a bit and you'll be able to see. And you can see that the lentil bead does kind of move all around. So let me just bring this back over here so you can see what I'm doing and continue swirling in the same direction. Okay, and hopefully you can see that we're starting to drag these in and they're starting to swirl. It's going to take a little while for it to actually be noticeable, but when you're actually swirling like this, it goes fairly fast. And this is something that you can do with leftover clay. So if you've got some leftover cane pieces and things like that, it's a great way to use your leftovers. So if I show you that, and you can see the other side starting to swirl as well. So I'm going to continue swirling until I am happy with the outcome. Okay. Now I'm quite happy with that. Now you're going to find that because we're kind of stretching this and mucking around with it, you're going to be able to start to see some of the underlying colours of the clay. So you can see the pearl whites coming out over there because the gelatos will have thinned quite a bit. That's perfectly fine, but it does mean that when you are making these, you can't use a colour as the essential core before you put all of the pieces on. That is not the right colour. So if you were to go and get some sort of horrible brown dark colour, use that as your core and then put the little slaps on, you would start to see that through here. So use something like translucent or pearl white, or white even, because we use that in this project, and that will work best. Okay, so now you need to choose the side that you like the best. And although I like both, I think I like this side because I really like this streak along here. So what I'll do is I'll take this and I'm going to flatten it. And you can see it retains the beautiful swirl pattern. And then I'm going to start pressing along the edges and I'm going to work it into a teardrop. And so it's already kind of in a round shape at the bottom here. And actually, I'm actually starting to like the other side more now. So you can decide after you've actually done this, because turning it into a teardrop or whatever shape you want to turn it into makes quite a big difference to how you like the pattern. Okay, so I've got it into a rough teardrop now, and so now's the time to actually decide which side do you like. Like that side actually, because we've got plenty of pink swirls and I like that the green's coming out here, whereas this one there's not much green. So then you'll place that on your tile and you'll gently press along the edges to kind of dome it so they form almost like a cabochon. Okay, and this is why I'm using gloves, because you could get a lot of fingerprints on this when you're doing this. But because you're using gloves, there's no risk of that at all, which is wonderful. Okay, and then I like to bring over a tissue blade because it can get into places where my fingers can't. And I'll smooth around the edges so I get rid of any bumps. And it also helps sharpen up some edges and things like that. And just round it off, make sure that you don't have any edges where it's not nicely domed. And this on its own is a really nice pendant. If you wanted to just have a pendant on a string, this is a really nice one. You could even just use the lentil bead as it was and turn that into a bunch of beads, and you could string those together. So there's a bunch of different things you could do here. Okay, almost done. There we are. One last thing to do now, because the back isn't going to be completely flat and things like that, and to save us trouble we want to make that nice and smooth. So I'm going to bring over, actually no, I don't want to bring over a sponge. I'm going to bring over a piece of greaseproof paper, and I'll just position the cabochon on that, and then I'll just gently press around the edges of the cabochon, almost in a way reshaping it some more. But because we're doing this on the greaseproof paper, we're pressing the back down onto the greaseproof paper, and so it will take on the texture of the greaseproof paper, which is nice and smooth. So we're almost there. You need to press down a little bit more. It can also help if you just gently smooth it like that. And then just make sure you don't have any glove prints or anything like that, because you can get some. Smooth off, and this will be your pendant. And then you'll do the exact same for another two, but instead of doing it in a teardrop shape, I'm going to be doing it in a football shape. So I'll show you those before I pop them in the oven. And then just before you bake this, check around, make sure that you're quite happy with it. Make sure that it is symmetrical as well, that's quite important. And just in general, make sure that you're completely happy with it, because it's so much easier to fix problems when it's raw. And even if you completely mess it up, it means that you haven't baked it, so you can turn it into leftover clay and use it for something else. So don't bake it unless you're completely happy with it. The number of beads that I baked in the beginning that I wasn't happy with, and then I couldn't turn them into anything, that was the biggest mistake I made as a beginner. So don't bake it unless you're perfectly happy with it. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'll pop that to the side over here, and I'll make some more. Okay, so I decided that instead of turning it into football, I wanted to turn it into a diamond. So I just thought that it was a nice shape, and so I'll do that. So I thought I'd show you how to do that quickly. So you'll take your lentil bead, choose your favourite side, flatten it, and just round off these edges that are fairly sharp, so that you're going to turn this into kind of coin shape. And then point one end and point the opposite end, and then you can work on it by turning it on its side. And I'm working on greaseproof paper again, and then I'll just flatten it out again. And then just like before, you'll just slowly work it into the correct shape. Dome these edges so that you're kind of getting a cabochon shape. And it's a really nice way to use the lentil beads. It looks really pretty. Especially with colours like these. These colours are really nice. It's very springy. Okay, and I'm just turning it around and smoothing off these sides. Okay, just going to make sure that I'm getting it symmetrical too. And then just smooth off this front here. Make sure there's no like creases or glove prints. Check the back, it's nice and smooth. And there's your diamond. And just have a look compared to the other one, because you want it to be very similar, each one to be very similar to the other one. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but you do want it, if you can see it there's a big difference, then you want to fix that. So this one needs to be a little longer, like that. And then you'll just quickly flatten it out again, smooth it, make sure these edges are all domed. So it's a little bit of fussing, but I think it's well worth it for the finished product. Okay, check the back, make sure that's all nice and smooth. And then check the two again. So they're pretty similar. Basically the same. Okay, so now you'll put them all on a piece of paper like this in the oven for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature, because I'm using Primo, and you will also put another piece of paper over the top so that you're tinting it, and this will help prevent scorching, and that's what you'll do for those ones. And then for your round beads, just if you've had them resting on the tile for a little while, gently roll them again just to get out any flat spots that might have formed. You don't have to roll them really hard, just roll them enough that you're going to be smoothing out any spots like that. You can see it's nice and smooth. Then you will pop that onto a bed of tissues. You'll make a big bed of tissues and pop each of these little round balls onto the bed of tissues and make sure they don't touch each other. And the reason we're going to do that is because we don't want these to have a flat spot, so we want them sitting in something almost like my hand over here while it's baking, and that will keep it from having flat spots. You'll bake those for a full hour with the other ones, have a piece of paper sitting over the top of them to tent them, bake for a full hour and let them cool, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so they're out of the oven. They're still a little warm, but they're looking really nice. You can see that translucent has cleared up. And I really like it in these lentil beads because the translucent generally gets swirled towards the middle, so you'll have a really interesting 3D effect when you include the translucent. So that is another reason why I encourage using the translucent, because you can see, where's my favourite one? Here it is. You can see with this one, the translucent, it creates a really cool holographic, well not holographic, but a really cool 3D sort of effect. And the Gelatos are actually translucent, so you'll be able to see the pearl white through there, and you can see it really creates a really cool effect and it shifts colour and everything. Well, these ones, it just looks like lots of little pieces of paper on top of each other, and the translucent actually creates a shadow under each one, and so I really encourage you using the translucent. It may seem like a really small step, but it makes a big difference. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to drill them. One thing I wanted to bring up before I drill is that these are smooth enough that I don't have to worry about sanding them. They're nice and smooth on the skin. You don't see any fingerprints. You can sand them if you want, but sanding round beads is really a pain. I know all of you, any of you who've tried that, really it just wasn't worth it. And so this is why I say that you should take care of the fingerprints before you put it in the oven, because now you don't have to do any sanding on these. You could do sanding on these ones, but they're fine as well. You don't really have to do sanding on them because the back's smooth, front's really nice and smooth, same with these ones. So all we have to do is we have to drill the holes and dip them in some varathane, and then we'll basically be able to use them as beads. Whereas if you had rolled them with your hands and not with gloves on, you would have fingerprints all over them and you'd have a lot of work ahead of you to get rid of those fingerprints. So just put on the gloves and roll them and it will make a huge difference to your work. So let's start drilling. I'll show you how to drill these, and I'm going to show you how to do the rounds. So let me just pop those over there. So I'm using a pin drill. You can get these off of eBay, and I'm going to pop it right down on the center of my piece so you can see there, and you're not going to be able to see it very well. Here, let me see if I can position it in a way so you can see. There we go. And I'm just going to be pressing down. And now because it's a push drill, just by pushing on this handle, it will drill my piece for me. Now I do still like to twist it myself just a little bit, because sometimes you have to go in, twist around and come back out to clear out some of the clay, because it can give a bit of resistance otherwise. And then this last little bit, I like to place my finger over where I think the drill bit's supposed to come out, and then I'll continue drilling. And I can feel the drill bit there. You can see, hopefully you can see, there's a little nubbin over there. And if you retreat and that wasn't the right spot, you won't really be able to spot it because it will have receded, but you know where your drill bit's supposed to come out. So you can retreat and try again if that's not in the right spot. But if it is in the right spot, I recommend going through the other way just to get a nice clean edge. And there is how you drill your beads. Really easy, and because you're drilling them now that they've been baked, you won't have to worry about fingerprints, you don't have to worry about distorting your shape, and it's actually a lot easier to drill after it's baked. This is not hard at all. I know some of you might be scared of a automatic drill. I definitely am, because you don't want a spinning drill near your fingers, and I can just see the scary side of that. But this, it's entirely manual. You don't have to worry about hurting yourself with it. It's really easy to use. Polymer clay and the drill go together really well. Polymer clay yields to it very easily. So now you've got a nice drill hole there. I can widen that later on if I want to, but that's perfectly fine for now. Just get rid of all of those little bits and pieces, and then you can do that with all of your other pieces. Okay, now for these ones. I am going to be drilling this one through the side. So again, I'm putting my finger here. I'm not pushing too hard with my drill, and I'm not doing it automatically this time around because I want to be completely in control, and it doesn't take long. And I'm putting my finger there so I can feel where the drill bit's going to come out, because I don't want to make a mistake. So I can feel it's coming out there. You can also see that it's kind of pushing the clay. And I want to make it just a slight readjustment. I want to be going just a little bit higher than that spot. There we go. Okay, now I'll go through the other side. And drill. Okay, and there we go. Got a nice clean hole. I just like to go through a few times just to clean it out. There we go. And now with this tutorial, I think instead of stringing them all next to each other, I think I might be actually linking them with wire, because these, it's going to be near impossible to drill straight through them, and I don't want to drill them that way because that would just look a little weird. And I think it'd be nice to put the wire in because it will add a little bit of a silver element and it will break up the pieces. So these ones, I'm going to drill through their ends like this. And this is why I'm not worrying about making these holes too big, because I'm going to be using nice thin wire that's not difficult to use. And you don't have to use wire. I think the wire is nice to get into, but you can string them if you wanted to. If you were going to string them together, I would recommend making these a different shape. Make them maybe a square or a round. Something that's going to be easy to drill straight through, but you can see that's going to be really hard for me to get nice and straight through. So I'll drill one on that end. And actually, what we could do if you wanted to string it, and I've actually had another idea here. Sorry, I'm thinking on the fly here so that you can see what I'm doing. I might do it like that, and then have that piece dangling down, instead of having it like that. So I think what I'll do is I'll just drill one end of these, this end that I like the best, then we'll varnish it, and then I will decide after they've been varnished whether I want to just string it hole or if I want to link it. So I'll just continue drilling all of my rounds and things, and I'll drill one end of the diamond, and when we're done we can do the varnishing. Okay, so I have drilled all of my beads. I've now got my pot of varathane here, and I have put the beads onto little pieces of aluminum wire so that I can dunk them into the varathane. And now if you don't have a big pot to dunk your beads in, just use a brush, apply a generous amount of them, leave them to hang, and then just use a tissue to dab it. So I'll start with the larger beads. Actually no, I'll start with these ones. So all you do is, if you're using a brush, just wipe it on, apply a generous amount with a brush. If you've just got a pot like this, just pop them in and take them out. Leave the wire piece in there just for a little while. That will help drain some of the excess. I'm going to just pop that one in as well, and that will just drain it. Okay. And there will be some excess. So I'm going to go and put this onto a little cardboard rack that I have ready, and there'll be a little piece of tissue paper underneath. And expect drips. You want to have drips because then you know that you've applied enough varnish. Okay, so I will dunk that one in, make sure I've got good cover. And just move it around. There's a little bit of excess on there, you can see it moving around. There's a drop. Okay, and then just let it hang from something and let the drips come, and then once you've got rid of most of that the excess drips, you can come in with a piece of tissue paper and just lightly dab the bottom. And do that with your round beads as well. Just let them sit for maybe 5 minutes, allow them to drip a bit, and then you can just dab up the excess. And then what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to let this dry for maybe half an hour, and then I'm going to dunk it again, and I'll continue doing that until I have at least 3 coats. I might do more than 3, because by having it drip like this, it's going to give you a really thin coat, and I want a nice glossy finish on this, so I'm going to need to do it a few times. So I'll do that with all of my beads, and you need to let it dry for at least half an hour between coats. And then when you do that, dunk it in for at least another 3 times. I probably will do 5, and you will let it cure for a full 2 hours after your final coat, and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so I've put 3 coats onto all of these, and I've taken them off of my little wire pieces. Now, if you haven't sanded your pieces, you're not going to get a shiny finish. You are going to get anything from a matte to a satin finish, even if you're putting a lot of coats of varathane on. I'm quite happy with this really nice satin finish. I don't want it to be overly shiny, but I think the satin finish is really nice. If you were to sand your pieces to a fairly high shine and then put the varathane on, you would get a much higher shine. And if you were to have fingerprints on your beads, it would be visible through the varathane. So the varathane takes up like one level and it won't hide flaws. So just keep that in mind. So if you're trying to hide something like a fingerprint, I would recommend either using resin or liquid clay. And if you're interested in that, just let me know in the comments and I'll provide some links to some tutorials for you, so you can go check that out. But so long as you don't have any fingerprints, the varathane works really well. So now we are going to start stringing. So I've got a piece of Acuflex here, and any stringing material will work for this. You don't have to use something like the Acuflex, just choose something that you will be able to string your beads onto. Okay, and then I'm just going to bring over a charlotte crimp, and you can get those on eBay, and a normal crimp. And you'll string on the charlotte crimp first, and then I'll string on the normal crimp just a little bit of the way, squish it with my pliers, bring my charlotte crimp back up, close that over the crimp, okay, then let me just bring over a jump ring. It's just easier to tip them out than try to fiddle with them. Okay, open that up with your plier, pop that through the hole in the charlotte crimp, and I'm just going to grab half of my clasp, and since we're going with a summer theme, I thought I would use a flower clasp. There we go, and that's 1/2 of our necklace, of our finishing done. Now you want to have a look and see what sort of spacer beads you can find. Check out on eBay as well, in your local bead stores. If you have any, you'll be able to find some super cool beads. Also, if you live in America or if you don't mind buying online, check out firemountaingems.com. They have some really cool spacer beads. So I'm thinking I'm going to go with these ones over here because they're fairly bulky and the pieces that I have made today are fairly big. So I'm going to go with some spacers that are not going to overtake my pieces, but they're not going to be too small either. Okay, and I've just got a little bit out. So you'll string on a spacer bead, and then just before you start, bring over your beads and just plan out how you want your necklace to be. There we go, got it roughly planned out. Okay, so I'll string out a spacer bead, then my first piece, then another spacer, and my next bead, and so on until I have used up all of my beads. Okay, and next you will grab your charlotte crimp and your crimp and string those both on, squish your crimp and slide the charlotte crimp up and close it around it. Then open a jump ring and put your clasp on, slide that through the charlotte crimp's loop, and you are done. Very simple but very effective project. And now you can do lots of things with this project. I've done a little bit more of a larger necklace than I originally planned, which is quite nice. I really like it. But you can take these pendants and use them individually in necklaces. You can make a necklace just with the round beads. You can make the round beads smaller and make bracelets. But there's lots of different techniques in here that you can just take out of the necklace as they are and turn them into projects. So I do hope that that tutorial was helpful to you, and if it was, please do let me know, and please do comment on what you liked about the project and if you would like to see more like it. And please do consider subscribing to my channel. I release videos every single week, and do check out my Patreon account because I also release videos on there every single month that I'm sure that you guys will enjoy. So I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.